Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very happy and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guests today are Suzanne and Max Lang. They are here to celebrate their brand new graphic novel, Grumpy Monkey Who Threw That? Before we invite our guests in, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Latkes for Santa Claus by Janie Emmaus. Latkes for Santa Claus is Janie Emmaus' debut picture book, illustrated by the amazing Brian Langdo. It was a finalist in the 2022 International Book Awards. In this humorous and endearing story, blending both Christmas and Hanukkah, a little girl and her stepbrother compete to leave Santa the best treats ever. It's a joyful, engaging read, perfect for culturally blended families and delightful for all readers. The playful rhymes will keep kids giggling, and Janie's family Latka recipe included at the end is to die for. Watch for Janie's next blended holiday book, Easter Eggs and Matzo Balls, coming out January in 2022. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by How Can We Be Kind? Beautiful picture book by Janet Hoffman. This special book asks children a very simple question. How can we be kind? The answer is by learning from the animal kingdom. Animals demonstrate kindness and empathy towards each other, and care and compassion can be seen throughout the natural world. This book shows children the ways that they can be kind just like their animal friends are, while at the same time teaching them about the magic and the beauty of the natural world. They can learn to be kind by welcoming like capybaras, who let other animals sit on top of them while they wallow in mud. Or perhaps they want to be like dolphins, who guide other species to their destinations. Or maybe they would like to work together like ants and bees, share what they have like jackdaws, or stick up for their friends like zebras. You and your kids are absolutely going to love this book. It's beautiful. How Can We Be Kind by Janet Hoffman. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Los Angeles in the great state of California. Our guests today are a husband and wife team responsible for the Grumpy Monkey series, a series of books from board books to early reader graphic novels. Today we're going to start our conversation about the latest in the series. It's called Grumpy Monkey Who Threw That? And it's a graphic novel for early readers. Please welcome to the show Suzanne and Max Lang. Hey, Suzanne, how are you?
Good. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. Suzanne is the author of the series. And Max, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. I'm the illustrator.
Yes, Max is the illustrator. And I'm really excited to talk to you folks about Grumpy Monkey. Max, I guess first I want to ask you, what comes first, the illustrations or the stories?
Usually the stories come first. It starts with an idea, but then we quite soon start about the visual approach to the storytelling as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand, but you always start with an idea.
Yeah. And Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit about Grumpy Monkey? Sounds a little bit different than Curious George.
Yeah, it is a little different. So first of all, the Grumpy Monkey character is actually a chimpanzee. He's not a monkey, so there, I believe, is a difference between with Curious George. But his kind of backstory is that his mother has always called him her little grumpy monkey. And we have a series of books involving Jim Panzee, the grumpy monkey. And they run the gamut from board books up to these young graphic novels, and he's basically a character who struggles a bit with life. I would say he has his struggles that he works through with the help of his best friend Norman, who is a gorilla, and some of the other animals in the jungle. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Max.
No, that's a good one.
Max is a wise man. Yes, Suzanne, you're the boss. I get it. No problem. It's how I stay married for 33 years. So where was Grumpy Monkey born? Whose brain was it born in?
It was born in Max's brain, I would say. You want to tell the story, or should I tell it? You can.
I can tell it. It was a long time ago, before we had children. Suzanne had a grumpy day, and I was trying to cheer her up. And she said, "You know what? Please don't cheer me up. I just need to be grumpy right now." And I could relate to that, but I'd never heard it expressed in that way. And I thought, maybe there could be a picture book there. And I filed that idea away. And for several months or years, it was kind of in the back of my head, kind of percolating. At some point, we went to a trip to Africa together, and we saw chimpanzees and gorillas in the wild. And that's kind of how I put the animal to that character. And we tried to figure it out. Originally, it was called Grumpy Day. And it evolved from there to be called Grumpy Monkey. And at some point, Suzanne joined, and she added all the character and the humor. And that's kind of where it originated. Yeah. The first book, it was called just Grumpy Monkey, and that's the original picture book where it all started.
Yeah, where Jim Panzee's having a grumpy day. Everyone's trying to cheer him up, and he doesn't want to be cheered up. And that's really from that day.
And it sounds, Mac, that you learned the lesson that, sometimes maybe your wife doesn't want to be cheered up a lot quicker than I did.
Well, that's why we made that book.
So, Suzanne, tell us about Who Threw That?
So, Who Threw That is a young graphic novel. It is, in this book, so Jim Panzee's, his nemesis is a bird called Oxpecker. She is indeed an oxpecker. Which is a kind of a bird that lives in our stories. She lives on a water buffalo, but when you see these birds that feed off of the fleas and things that are on these herd animals, so she's that type of a bird. So her name is Oxpecker. She's Jim's nemesis, and Jim gets accused of throwing a banana peel on her, and he says he didn't do it. She says he did. Most of the animals in the jungle think that Jim is lying and that he did indeed throw this banana peel on her. They kick him out of the jungle. He and his best friend Norman leave the jungle and they go to the desert. And Jim loves it. The desert's quiet. There's no one bothering him. But Norman is having a tough time. It's too hot. There's no bananas. Everything's prickly. And so Jim realizes they need to go back to the jungle. And I don't know if I should give the spoilers or not.
How do people usually do it?
But
we can hang on the cliff there and let people's imagination. I have to tell, and I've said this a lot here on the podcast, I was one of those parents. My son is now 29. He loved graphic novels. He loved anime, still loves graphic novels and anime. In fact, he just bought a home down in Florida, and I spent, before I drove out to L.A., I drove down to Florida to deliver 5 cartons of his graphic novels and comics that he's collected over the years.
Amazing.
And while I supported him reading those books, I didn't appreciate that he was really reading. And I didn't give him the credit for that. And I know in middle school and in high school, there were often times when I would go into his room and find him reading a graphic novel that I bought him, and just kind of, bemoaning, like, dude, could you please read a book that doesn't have pictures in it once in a while? I'm paying for this private school, and, but I didn't appreciate that he was reading literature. That he was reading good stories that had a rich vocabulary and that had characters that were fully developed and storylines that were fully developed. And I repeat that story because I don't want parents who are listening to make the same mistake that I made. For a lot of kids, if it wasn't for graphic novels, and it's probably for my son, if it wasn't for graphic novels, they wouldn't be reading anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's true in our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what brought us to develop Grumpy Monkey from a picture book to a graphic novel, because we noticed it with our children that they were devouring these graphic novels. And we couldn't get enough, because they read them fast. They're really into it, and they read so much of it, and we felt like, there would be an opportunity to expand the Grumpy Monkey universe into graphic novels to give kids of that age something fun to read as well.
Yeah. It sounds like and I don't know if you approach it this way, but it sounds like from a marketing perspective, you guys, you hit it out of the park. You start them young, 1 year old, chewing on the Grumpy Monkey board book, and you hook them all the way through high school.
It was never planned like that, it wasn't originated like that, but it's certainly something that we're aware of. And because, I know that from my childhood, you grow up with characters that you love in a picture book, and then if you want more of these characters, and children develop, and they want more advanced stories, and they want to have a different sense of humor, so we're trying to adapt to that as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Max, I have to ask you, I've had a number of illustrators on, a number of illustrators who created graphic novels, and I've had two answers for this. One of the illustrators, I asked her the inspiration for her particular character and the style that she drew the character in. She said, quite honestly, I knew I was going to have to draw this character a whole bunch of times for a graphic novel, so I wanted to make it as simple as possible. And then I spoke to another illustrator who said, yeah, I wish I did that, because I'm doing these historical graphic novels that have all this detail, and it takes me forever to do the illustration. Where are you on that spectrum?
Luckily, it doesn't take too long to draw it, but again, we didn't preconceive drawing the character in a graphic novel at any point, when we were doing the picture books, and I certainly didn't expect to have to draw him over and over and over again. I was thinking a lot about how to draw him in the beginning, and that it took a long time to figure out how to draw him, but I never would have conceived that I have to draw him for several books, several graphic novels, 80 pages long, fully colored. So, and the first one was very, very, very intimidating on that level, I will say.
That first graphic
step from picture book to graphic novel. It's like, now you have to do 4 times the amount of work at least in shorter amount of time, and somehow keep the quality up. So, yeah.
So we're talking going from maybe 30 illustrations to 120, 150?
Yeah, picture book usually has about, 32, 40 pages. This one has 80 pages, but each page has several pictures that you have to compose and illustrate, and there's the characters in each panel almost. So yeah, I haven't counted it, but it's a significantly more work. Yeah.
It's probably a good idea that you don't count them, because maybe you'd say, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Suzanne, for you, there is quite a difference between writing a board book and writing a graphic novel. I mean, again, in terms of, a typical picture book is 500-600 words. I'm imagining an 80-page graphic novel with multiple panels. Now you're talking, again, maybe 3 or 4 times that word count. And you also, the writing is different. It has to, be more mature. How was that for you, making that transition?
That was exciting and intimidating at the same time. It was something I really wanted to do. I wanted to, I love the format, and I really wanted to try my hand at that format. But it was totally intimidating because it's a much bigger story. And that first graphic novel took a long time. I mean, they take a long time anyway. It's a lot of story, but I think just mentally for me, there were hurdles to overcome to be able to kind of handle that load and feel ready to write in this longer format. But once I got into it, it was so rewarding, and it was so much fun. It was that experience of working really hard but enjoying it, and it was so much fun because you can do this different kind of humor. I love the humor in our picture books, and I even love the humor in the board books. But you get to do something a bit different in the graphic novels, and you can make different kinds of jokes and play with the characters a little more. And the other thing I really like about the format of the young graphic novel in particular is that they're multi-chapter. So in our case, there's 3 chapters, but then in between the chapters are interstitials. So you have a variety to the format. So in between chapters, we have the first interstitial is this thing called Pam Panzee's Primate Primer. And it's Jim Panzee's mother doing a lesson about primates. But you get to do it in a very fun way and playful way. And then the second interstitial, we use Jim's dad, Chip Panzee, and it's called Chomp and Chat with Chip Panzee. And he's giving the kids a recipe that we tried to make it a recipe that's healthy-ish, and that hopefully kids can make on their own if they are allowed, but that, of course, they could do with adult help. And then there's a recipe, and then like a little today's chat, and he gives a conversation starter. And I just love the variety of the format, and so for me that was really fun to play with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is going to sound like a silly question, but I'm just curious. You've made the progression from board book to picture book to young graphic novel. Any chance in the future we're going to have a grumpy monkey YA romance novel?
Maybe not a grumpy monkey. We definitely have ideas between us for books that are not grumpy monkey, and I'd say there are a couple of graphic novel ideas we have that would skew older than the grumpy monkey graphic novels.
Well, and you have ideas.
And I have some ideas for some just novels, young reader novels. That's true. Which tend to veer towards mystery for some reason. We'll see. We'll see if anyone ever lets me do that.
It's all the true crime podcasts.
I'm curious. One of the things that surprised me when I first started doing the podcast 5 years ago, I learned that most often when a picture book is being created, there is little or no communication between the author and the illustrator, especially during the creation process. And you are the opposite. Not only you're together every day, and how does that work for you both? Is that a blessing? Is it kind of makes you grumpy sometimes?
For me, from a work point of view, absolute blessing. It's the best. Not loading the dishwasher, grumpy, but that's separate from work. But in terms of I feel so lucky because when I hear that, from other authors, I can't even imagine working that way. I couldn't imagine it. Like for us, it's also integrated in terms of the words and the pictures and the way we work. I couldn't imagine not having that working relationship. I don't know what.
No. I think it's part of our secret is that the visuals and the writing go hand in hand, and you can only have that in that way or in such an organic process if you talk to each other every day. I think. Yeah.
I'm curious, Max. You told us that typically the story comes first, and in the process of creating these books. But I'm wondering if you ever, especially with the graphic novel, if you're ever at a point where Suzanne takes you up to this point, maybe chapter 3 or the 3rd section, and she's not quite ready and not quite sure where it's going in chapter 4, and you've just finished the last panel for chapter 3, and you just have a great idea. I know what I want to draw next. Does that ever happen that inspires Suzanne's next move?
I would say the whole story arc is already formulated in the writing. But there are certain jokes or like beats that I find I have to do slightly different, or I have an idea for a joke while I'm drawing, or I want to expand the story a little bit here. It's more on that level. It's not like that I start drawing and I don't know where it's going. Mm-hmm. I do know very well. I have a very good overview over the whole story by the time I start the first sketches. But that doesn't mean that what I am doing is not informing Suzanne in the writing, or that I can't feed back into that. I feel like that it usually evolves a little bit. Yeah, once I start drawing. Yeah.
Do you find, Suzanne, that you're writing graphic novels, you're writing more dialogue than you would in a picture book?
Absolutely. And that was another challenge with the first graphic novel, was just literally how to write it, like how to format the manuscript, because there's a lot that you want to describe visually, but then just in terms of like having something readable and understandable that I could hand to Max. And I first, started doing it in a way, I don't even remember exactly what I did, but Max looked at it, he said, I can't make sense of this. And his suggestion, because we both come out of animation, and he said, write it as a script. Mm-hmm. And that was so helpful. And just because it is so dialogue heavy, and then any of the visual descriptions I wanted to do, I could write in the way you would describe a scene in a script. And that changed everything. That's how we write the graphic novels now.
Yeah, we have no idea how other people write them.
We don't know how professionals do it, but that's how we do it.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Coming out of animation, it seems like Grumpy Monkey would be the perfect vehicle to drive into animation. Any work on that front?
We've had some requests, but we don't have any plans to adapt it into animation. In a way, we love that everyone has their own voice for the characters in their heads, and every parent can make up their own voices. And I think it's also part of the appeal of the character that you can hear him in a way,
in your own way.
Yeah,
and I think for us as creators, at least right now, it's such an organic way to grow the characters in the world through books, and it's also a very controlled way, because once you get into animation, just by virtue of the demands of that medium, suddenly hundreds of people are involved, and it becomes harder to control your vision in that process. And so for right now, at least, it's very satisfying to be able to evolve this world and these characters in books.
Now, I totally respect Max's feeling that he wants, and your feeling that you want the readers, the families, the parents to kind of hear Grumpy Monkey in their own voice. But since your grumpiness was the inspiration for Grumpy Monkey, I was wondering, Suzanne, what's Grumpy Monkey's voice sound like in your head?
Oh gosh, well, there's a voice I do, but it's not. I can't always. What's in my head isn't what comes out. his catchphrase in the first book, and that when I do like school visits with, and I'm reading the first book, and we actually have a little puppet of the Grumpy Monkey, and when because his catchphrase is "I'm not grumpy," and I'll have him just come out like this. So it's a bit of, but I mean. In my head, it doesn't sound like it. I'm not grumpy. It's a gravelly voice, but it's not this voice.
That sounds like when I imagine myself singing. It never comes out the way it sounds in my head.
Exactly.
Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Grumpy Monkey, the board books, the picture books, the young reader graphic novels. So where can they find you online?
Well, there's Random House has a page with all the...
Yeah, if you look up either Suzanne Lang or Max Lang in Penguin Random House, there are our pages with all of our books through our publisher. We have a Facebook page, which is Suzanne and Max Lang on Facebook.
I
have an Instagram account where Max Tobias Lang.
Great. Well, those are certainly a bunch of places they can find you. And Grumpy Monkey, Who Threw That, is available now online and in bookstores?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, we've had a really fun time. This really has been a fun time talking about Grumpy Monkey with the author and illustrator, Suzanne Lang and Max Lang. My friends, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll have another author-illustrator team on. They're not husband and wife, but they are good buddies. Scott Rothman and Pete Oswald. They'll be here to celebrate Blue Bison Needs a Haircut. And they also reveal their next book in the series and a possible title for a future book comes up. Listen to the episode. You'll love it, and you'll find out what I'm talking about. We would love it if you could connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, @readingwithyourkids, on Instagram, @readingwithyourkids, on TikTok, @JedleyMagic, on Twitter. Of course, we'd love it if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our free newsletter, soon to be online magazine. It's free, and also use the contact button at the top of the page. Tell us what it is we're doing that you like. Tell us what we could be doing better. And tell us who you would like to hear on a future episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guests, Suzanne and Max Lang. Please be sure to check out Grumpy Monkey, Who Threw That. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q, Jordan Saley, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.